Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. Thanks for joining our weekly live stream. This is a live discussion we have every week to talk about all things related to digital transformation, and it's a tech agnostic view of the digital transformation and enterprise technology space. Today, we are going to talk about rock and roll and ERP, two things that oftentimes people don't think go together, but in today's discussion, it will go together. We're going to talk about the live music entertainment industry and how enterprise technology software can enable that. And more specifically, we're going to talk to a client of ours who's in the industry who recently has gone through an ERP implementation. And we're going to learn some of the lessons from that implementation, the good, the bad, the ugly, the unabridged, unfiltered truth behind what really happens behind the scenes and backstage, if you will, of these ERP implementations. I'll introduce our guest here in just a moment, but before we do that, I want to thank you all for joining. We're streaming live here today to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter/X, and Twitch and TikTok. So thanks for joining wherever you're joining from today. Secondly, this is our weekly live discussion, as I mentioned, but the reason we do this live is because we'll edit this recording, we'll add some additional content to it, and we'll make it part of our weekly Transformation Ground Control podcast. That's a podcast that we release every Wednesday. And if you go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, you can see all the episodes we've put out, which I think is around 230 episodes so far over the last 4-5 years. I think it is 4.5 years. So check out transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can see all the past episodes. You'll see this episode stream next week as a formal finalized episode of that podcast. Also, we are going to take live audience questions. So we're keeping an eye on the chat here. Any questions you have along the way, we'd love to hear any thoughts, questions, comments you have. We're going to pull those questions into the conversation here as we go here today. So we'll keep an eye on the chat there. I have 2 questions for the audience. Speaking of the chat, before we get started, before I introduce our guest, first question that I ask you to drop in the chat is what city and country you're joining from. We typically draw on a global audience and community here, so I always love to see where people are joining from. And our guest here today works for an organization that services the worldwide global community, and we'll talk about his company here in just a moment. But love to hear what city and country you're joining from. And I'd also love to hear as a follow-up, usually I only ask you one question on these live streams, but I ask you 2 today. One is what city and country you're joining from. Second question is what is the best concert you've ever been to? What's your favorite concert? Or, if it wasn't a concert, what sort of entertainment performance was your favorite of all time? So just drop that in the chat, and I'd love to hear your feedback here. So that all being said, our topic today is Backstage with ERP, lessons from an ERP implementation at Clair Global. And Clair Global is a client of ours. I'll let our guest describe what they do in more detail. But joining us from Clair Global is Seth Morth. Seth, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thank you for having me, Eric. My pleasure.
Yeah, great to have you here. And first of all, before we jump into some of the questions I've got for you about your recent ERP implementation, tell us a little bit about, first of all, tell us about Clair Global, and then I want to ask you a little bit about you and your background, and not only what you do at Clair, but what you've done leading up to Clair. So tell us about Clair first, if you don't mind.
That's a lot. I've been here 21 years. I think the first thing I want to say is there are 5 other key people I want to say thank you to, and they are Amanda Mull, our corporate controller, Corvin Oberholzer, who really managed the implementation for what is our construction line of business, more on that in a minute, Kate Serb, our procurement and supply chain big boss, Alec Fouts, who is one of our software engineers in our IT team, and Mike Dintz, who is moves and shakes in our product manufacturing group. So that's a light introduction on key people in the organization. Clair Global has 3 key lines of business worldwide. We support live events, whether it's IT networking, audio, video, and lighting. The heart of that is audio touring, but since the 90s, the organization's changed and grown worldwide to bring in pretty much anything that's fan-facing. System integration is something that we've been doing for a long time. I think it started in '89, and that started out similarly. People wanted that premier audio quality system, and we installed it. And that also has grown to be IT networking, audio, video, lighting, rigging, whatever people want, gigantic LED walls, and all sorts of venues worldwide. And the third final line of business is product manufacturing. And that is for external sales to customers and to support our system integration line of business, as well as to support our live events business. We use the speakers that we make and some of our other IP, and we also use speakers that are common in the industry, as well as a whole host of other technology. So my role in the organization currently is to make the organization more organized, for lack of a better word. That's my elevator pitch. That's like the door. Um, but it's been an interesting project. Changed my title into it because we knew it would be a multi-year adventure, and so officially, I'm the solution architect, which is what it started out as. I'm the Seek, and still am doing. It's like I had a kid. It'll always be my kid, and so I have answers to questions even now that people just like after we've been using it now for 4 or 5 months. They still I'm the one with the answer because it's my kid. Uh,
Right.
but then as the project moved on, became the project manager and change manager. And there's, oddly enough, the solution architect, what my title is, I don't think maybe you know better than I do that there's a certification out there for somebody who wants to go for it.
For
Cool,
solution architect?
right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Right?
Be
But
good.
project management, I got my PMP, and then I think you had Tim on with ProSci. I got my ADCAR certification. All of those during the project as well, and I hope to get my CCMP soon when I have
So
a moment to sit for the exam.
so you've got certifications plus battle wounds in the line of
Battle
fire.
wounds, yeah, but it's more of I've been with the organization for 21 years, and so in various aspects of it. And I know a lot of the people, and I knew a lot of the people. I know a whole lot more now, especially worldwide. But I was able to relate to them because I am one of them in whatever it is. You can talk about using a handheld palm router to somebody in the wood shop. The CNC machine's a little squirrely. That's a bit unique, but I can talk at least about the operating system they're on. Um, Touring is an easy conversation to have, and the system integration, that's the chunk I started out with and was worked through for 15 odd years.
Yeah. So of the concerts that Clair Global has been involved with, or the artists or the tours that they've supported, do you have a favorite, like one that you personally just that was your favorite performance, or that was your favorite concert that Claire supported?
Ooh, so it's hard to have a favorite, but I would say that U2, who's a long-standing client of ours, their what they did with 360 was top-notch production.
Yeah.
That wasn't that was nothing to sneeze at. Like that was a big deal in the industry and for us, and it was very um, cool if you went and you saw it. There are other things that I've done that kind of blur the line. Where when I was doing system integration, I think probably my favorite project was out of our Nashville office in 2010. The Cumberland River flooded Nashville. Grand Ole Opry got and it was like water above the stage there.
I
We
forgot
were
about
part of the refit of the Grand Ole Opry. And so I was there at the first broadcast when they came back, and they maintained their broadcast. They went off somewhere else, but when they came back, and that was just like, poof, that was a heck of a thing to see and witness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. So did you guys do the not to get too far down the rabbit hole of rock and roll and music, but it's hard not to, and given what you do, and then given
Sure.
the fact that I love music too. And with you two, did you guys do the Zooropa tour? Do you remember
Yep.
the like back in the
Absolutely.
90s? Because I
Yep.
remember
That's
going to that. I was in college at the time, and I remember going to that show. And I wasn't a huge U2 fan at the time, but that show just blew me away. Just with I still remember all the multimedia stuff, which at that time was very unique.
right.
I mean, now
Yeah.
it's the ante's been raised quite a bit, but that's pretty cool that you guys did that.
Yeah, I've been through any number of seating locations in the company, and I think 1, 2, 3 people ago was Steve McHale, who was, I believe, monitor mix engineer for that portion or that leg of the tour, if not the whole tour. He'll have to forgive me for this. And oddly enough, Chad Schreiner, who's managing our service organization and was also, I can't name everybody, we'd be here all day, led the charge on our ERP implementation, focusing on service. He also worked that tour. I'm quite certain of that. He was a long-standing U2 tech.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really cool going to your office in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Just a big, huge campus where it's really cool. I mean, you've got these, what do you call them? The practice
Yep.
performance
Yep.
areas
We
where you
have.
set everything up, and the artists actually come to Lidditz, Pennsylvania to trial or to pilot the setups, right? That you guys will kind of mock set up a venue
Yeah.
for them, and they'll come to Lidditz and perform just to test everything out. Is that how that works?
Yep. That is exactly how that works. So we have two large studios here, and uh, give you a bit of a plug for it. Nashville has a similar campus opening this October with equal number of big studios, and I think even more small studios because Music City. But each of the larger studios is able to hold an ice rink, easily hold an ice rink.
Wow.
So there, it's not just a mock-up or a pilot. Like, it is the real thing. Like, it is no different than if they went into some branded uh, arena, wherever it might be. And you can also get pretty far into simulating what would happen in an arena as well. And
Yeah.
there's, it's not just rock and roll. It's kind of funny where it was Wells Fargo Center or whatever it's called. They test hung the new LED scoreboard in one of the studios because it's an arena. So it was just pretty interesting that they did that, and then they moved it to the actual arena and then put it in for real.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of eye opening to see not only the breadth of artists that you guys have worked with over the years, but also just what goes into creating these tours. I mean, it's pretty fascinating to see. Um, and actually, before I ask you my first question, kind of shifting gears a little bit, I want to come back to the audience here. I'm going to flip the screen here real quick and just share some of the comments. We've got Emerson joining from Cape Town, South Africa. Thanks for joining us to hear.
Cool.
Tiago joining from Puerto Rico. I did ask, and I hope I'm saying it right. It's either Thiago or Tiago. I'm not sure if the H is silent or not, from Puerto Rico, so I apologize for that. But your favorite show is Ramstein, which
Okay.
so
Right. Yeah.
some heavy stuff there. I like it. I'm more of a Motorhead guy myself, but that's okay. And then let's see. Emerson says that his favorite was Cape Town Jazz Festival with Andreas Vollenweider.
Vollenweider. Yeah.
Vollenweider, okay.
Yeah.
You must know that performer.
It's a key anchor in the history of electronic music. We'll just.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I did not know that. Interesting. Tyler is joining, says that joining from Bettendorf, Iowa. Best concert is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers circa 1999. I think I went to that actually at Red Rocks in Colorado, which is another cool venue. So anyway, curious to hear where the rest of you, what the rest of you think your favorite concert, your favorite performance that you've ever been to. And then we can even compare notes and see if it's a Clair Global client, a client of yours. But just to get started here, Seth, kind of shifting gears back into the world of ERP, you don't typically think about music, entertainment, et cetera, and ERP technology. It's almost like you're taking something super cool and sexy and then bringing in ERP. And when I say super cool and sexy, I'm talking about rock and roll and music, not ERP. How do you, it's kind of an interesting contrast to talk about something like rock and roll and then enterprise technology. What, like if we back way to the beginning, why did you guys come to this conclusion that, hey, we need to not only be this, do what we do as far as producing these shows, but we also need to think about ERP technology, back office technologies. What was it sort of led you down this path in the first place?
Right. You raise an interesting point there. Yeah, the business is alluring, right? There's lots to captivate people, but in the background, it is logistics. You've got to get the stuff there in time and all the stuff and have it all work so it happens. So for us, from what we need to do to support our live events, the closest thing we have as a talking point is the military. It's like it's a lot like that. For us, the ERP we actually put in place, it's not all consuming, but key things for us were our financials worldwide, back office accounting, and then fiscal management of the entire organization, as well as procurement and supply chain to feed what is the ERP, or the inventory management program, that supports operations. So we have two big things working together, and we've snuggled them up with each other. The prior system was a little clunky and left a lot of gaps and lots of frustrations. But we also saw that as much as it couldn't support what we were doing now, it definitely wouldn't support where we've been headed as an organization and are going. And as painful as it was, we're thankful that we did it.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you, if we go to the very beginning, um, how did you start the process? So you've got this need you've identified. There's a pain you're trying to address. What did you do to get started on the journey?
First thing I did was actually stabilize what we had and finish what we could of the prior system we were using. It wasn't deployed with like a full project mindset, and there were just things were incomplete or frustration, open ended aspects of it.
Mm,
So uh, dialed in what we could and stabilized it so we had a framework that would sustain us while we went on the path into the future. And from that, I learned a bit about what we needed as an organization. Um, that's that's really what started it all. And then as we worked through the path, it, it was, well, how do we find what we need? And that's where, after a bit of analysis paralysis, we called third stage.
right. Tell us about the analysis paralysis, and then of course I'll ask you about calling third stage. But what do you mean by that? You guys just were spinning your wheels, doing tons of research, not knowing where to go, or kind of how did that
I think
transpire?
everybody knew what they wanted as individuals. There wasn't really a good collective about we need it as an organization, other than what I was trying to build up, which people were coming around to. Um, but it got to the point where if we talked with a vendor salespeople, that was the best conversation we had just had. And so as you talk through them, it's, well, then the others, and we had gotten to the point where there were some disqualifications, uh, but we were hemming and hawing, and we knew we did not know the full landscape of available options, and we also knew that we didn't know and wouldn't really be able to find out more than what we were able to superficially find until we got into it. We
Mm,
figured we could make almost anything work, but that's uh, I mean, which honestly, it's all software, right? You probably could, but it is, how easy would it be to make it work, and then what would be the thing that would be the fastest to stand up for us, and those were big drivers for us.
yeah, yeah. So then you call third stage. We come in and help you through the evaluation and selection process. Tell us how that went, if you don't mind. Like, what short list did you start with? What did you end up selecting?
We I think we went through like a dozen that seemed to do it, because we were looking for something that would handle worldwide financials with unique financial aspects of each of those three lines of business. But we also were looking for something that was able to effectively do construction projects, which is actually fairly tricky,
Mhm.
and being pretty darn good at manufacturing, if not great at it. That was probably the easiest portion of it, because when we got into the accounting, you couldn't talk about the accounting without talking about the finance and the reporting and all of that. So to have it all work harmoniously, uh, we didn't want to get boxed in. We got down to two final selections, and we invited them to the campus, and we gave each one of them 2 days to sit us down and do some dog and ponies. And that was very telling. In some of the presentations that happened were, yeah, either really PowerPoint heavy, or what we liked more was, well, show us the thing working. And so perhaps uh, if somebody had shown us on one of the other ones the thing working better, we would have taken a more positive view of it. But when that's not happening, you really do need to ask yourself, why aren't you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you actually showing me a thing? And it got pretty aggravating at some points for some of these vendors. There was one of them, and I'm a smart guy. I told him, well, could you click on that search and type this in? And he's like, no, 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 it's a PowerPoint slide. Because the whole thing was in PowerPoint. I'm like, I'm not here to buy PowerPoint. I already
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah. Especially with nowadays with generative AI, I could create a mock-up of a screen without having any software behind it, you know?
Right.
So you want to know that it's real, and that especially now with these uh, cloud, these cloud upgrades or these migrations that the vendors are making to the cloud, you want to make sure that you're seeing what's actually in production and actually working, not just what they think will be on the
Yeah.
roadmap in the future.
And cloud, like I cannot tell you the number of times I held up my phone and said, it's got to get on this. The prior application was terrestrial, and for good or bad, we had to spin up servers and make sure VPNs and blah blah blah, and our wide area network, which wasn't really horrible, but it wasn't a friendly mobile experience. And they have a web app, and I'm like, ugh. But it's been a very interesting decade, I guess, in ERP, and you've seen this far more than I have, with things going to the cloud and people saying, "Oh, we're cloud," and I'm like, my little spiel is now that I've seen it and lived it, it is anything that's terrestrial to get to the cloud, it goes through a big old stack of fog first, and working
Yeah.
through that fog and cutting through it to see what that future state of something being in the cloud is something you need to watch out for. And there were applications that we looked at, or programs or ERPs that we looked at, where it was a stack of applications, and you go here, like menus on the left, menus on the right, menus on the top and the left, and you're like, gah. Whereas what is, you would think, an indicator of a more harmonious back end is when there's consistency in the UI and user experience. Then you maybe there are different modules and apps in the back end, but it's not as frenetic, and it's much easier to learn and teach. And for us as an organization, um, most everybody has many hats on, but working through an ERP system, unless you're like, I don't know, like a top 10 bazillion dollar company, you don't have one person on one screen. They typically go to several screens to do their job. And if somebody was going here and it just, you knew they were working through different apps, was just hokey.
Yeah. Yeah. So what were the two finalists that you considered when all was said and done? You looked at close to a dozen,
Mhm.
narrowed it down to the two. Who were the two, and what'd you pick?
The two finalists were Oracle Cloud, or ERP Cloud, I think is what they call it, and IFS. And we chose IFS.
Okay, great. And then what did it come down to? When you made that decision to choose IFS over Oracle, like were there, a couple or a handful of not deal breakers, but things that really put them over the edge that said, hey, this is why it's a good fit?
We believed that they could execute, and that we would be able to take a certain degree of ownership of the platform and be able to customize is a mini splendored word, but be able to sustain ourselves and work with it into the future.
Mhm.
And looking at IFS, it it is that uniform UI and user experience, meaning that we dug in, and there's not COBOL databases in the background with big blobs you can't get into, and it wasn't a sequence or a collection of various apps that we'd have to decode and try and get to work. It's like, no, it's just IFS, and you can get to work. Sure, it's cloud, so it's database to interface stuff for our data migration, but we knew we would be tangling with that, and that was all right. And the fact that we we were able to have an effective conversation with them about what we wanted to do was really pretty helpful to us. We felt understood, and like I said, it's like we had to have a very unique business. They did their best to understand it and show us things that we wanted, but also they were very deep and knowledgeable in the project side.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's you look at some of the unique nuances of your business as far as you talked about construction and manufacturing, and financials, global financials. I mean, those three right there, those three, especially all three together, that kind of eliminates a lot of options right away. And then I imagine that that's a big part of what it came down to was you need a solution that could sort of specialize in that in those nuances that you guys do with construction and manufacturing and logistics and
That's right.
everything else
Yeah.
you do. Yeah, very interesting. I want to come back to the audience, just a couple audience questions or comments here that I haven't gotten to yet. Um, Apparently, I didn't realize you had a fan base, or I didn't realize how big your fan base was.
Oh
But
my gosh.
Laura,
I
Laura,
was like, you told me like you should post this on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh man, if I do that, like what's gonna happen? But yeah, Laura is she was a backstop for Amanda Mull, who I mentioned, and is a key player in our worldwide accounting team, and has been and it's just a pleasure to work with and a very effective team player, like all everybody. But really, like Laura and the others I've mentioned, anytime I mention a name, these folks are capable of having a conversation I cannot keep up with
yeah,
about how IFS works internally, and it is amazing.
yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Laura, and I'm excited to learn more about this fan club you have going here. Um, but Emerson made a comment here just as a follow up to a comment you
Mm,
made. Seth absolutely like military and training, and I suppose the logistics side of what you do and moving materials and people and logistics throughout the world. I mean, that's a pretty big undertaking that could strain your enterprise technologies, I would imagine, if you don't handle it right.
sure, absolutely. And actually, lighting on to that last word there for training, uh, for us, our director of IT, Benjamin Stroughton, had uh, a great vision of how software should work, and there are things that he's always happy with, and there are things that were frustration points with any software. It doesn't matter his phone, his car, whatever. He is a software engineer. What our approach was for this project was wipe everything away, build it up from scratch as much as possible to recreate what we would be experiencing in go live so that when we cut over, it is as short as possible.
Hmm.
We're an active organization. We're constantly adding customers. We're constantly adding suppliers. Work in progress. Um, all of those things and the data migration. And yeah, we had this old system, but there were 24 other things that we brought into IFS as well. So there was a massive effort, and we basically changed it all over in a weekend. And it was Jen Schreiner in our uh, receptionist there. She kept us fed and watered, and we were able to survive. But it was a worldwide effort, and there were some staggered things where we deliberately said, "Okay, you can come in, next month because of this thing." And I've learned so much about international tax; it's not even funny. Um, but it was a very interesting time.
I can imagine. Yeah. So it wasn't as simple as choosing the software. That was the hardest part. Now we just have to worry about implementing it. I'm guessing that's not what you're saying. You're saying implementation was challenging and interesting. What would you say your biggest challenge was? If you had to pick one thing that was like, this is the one thing that either you didn't expect or was more difficult than you thought.
I'm going to say that the surprise to me was more of an epiphany when I realized that it was a business project and not an IT project.
Hmm.
As soon as I made that mental little adjustment and I changed how I was interacting with the team, um, things got better. They were never perfect, but you're much you, I was able to have a clear vision of how to get from where we were to where we were going. And it's like, IT, happy to help. Fantastic set of database administrators and software engineers, great, but they don't know the data. They don't know how the data would be used. But also, and fun times, policy, processes and procedures. That's business. IT's like, what do you want it to do? You got to tell us. So we did that. We got that group of people to help get everything in order, and then cross functionally all work together worldwide. And like, remember to talk to Australia, remember to talk to Germany, remember to talk to Switzerland and the UK. And it was, whew. So yeah, it was a lot of effort by a lot of people. But I'm kind of thankful I don't have to wake up at whatever Euro clock in the morning to talk with Europe and end my day talking to Australia at whatever in the evening. There were some long days in there for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, Great team worldwide, but it was, we hadn't done a bit large business project like that before, and we've done large IT projects, but they were always managed as IT, like almost in a silo. And we have good cooperative working arrangements with everybody, but to have it be an actual business project and make sure that you're actually working with the organization to build something that is better for the whole organization is a monumental task, especially if the organization is growing uh, both organically and inorganically. Fun times.
Yeah. Was there a so what led you to that epiphany? Were there mistakes you made along the way, or the times you stubbed your toe, or saw certain challenges that made you realize, wait, this isn't just an IT project, this is business? I mean, was there some tipping point there that made you come, because a lot of teams we work with, a lot of clients we work with, it's not, they don't realize it soon enough in some cases. But
Sure.
it sounds like you were able to affect the outcome of the project by recognizing that early on. What led you there?
Uh, it was third stage, and it was something that we have not spoken about, where we extended our scope with third stage for change management, and it was Atia Akbar saying, "Hey, like, who are your business leaders?" And I had already like, I knew who the team was, and they've been part of the selection process. But then it was like, in that moment, I'm like, ah, it's not, it's a project, like, sure, but it's actually a program. So each of these folks, they Corvin truly was. He took on project management of the portion to integrate for our construction line of business. But the others also had to do that as well, just in wrangling and communicating with the people, the project management and the change management side. I scheduled a lot of things. I did lots of meetings, some like 1,200 meetings.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but and by the way, yeah, get organized when you do this. It's like I have a log of them. It's actually 1,158 the last time I counted, and
Of
that's
of meetings you had?
transcription summaries and recordings and all that. So
Wow.
if it was talked about, I got it. There are a couple hundred I missed, um, but you need to be organized. But as you work through this, I wouldn't expect any of those folks to manage a project. I help them, but it wasn't until I brought them in for what they truly excelled at, which was, hey, the current policy, how does that work? Could it be better? And then how do we leverage IFS in its standard functionality to help us do that thing? That's the hard part. It's not, and this is where it could be any ERP. It's like, well, how do you use it to do that? Until you know what that is that the business needs, you're not going to have a successful project unless you are incredibly lucky. Keep the
Right.
door open for lucky, but do not count on it.
Right, right. That's really interesting, and, I'm glad that you shared that, because it's helpful to hear that sort of the contrast between how you treat it as an IT project and versus what you need to do in terms of treating it as a business project. One thing that's real specific to this whole thread that we're on right now, there's a question here I want to pull up, from the audience. This is from Darian on LinkedIn. And Darian says, how did you balance global standardization with the highly localized on the ground needs of the teams around the world? You were just talking about how you would talk to UK, Australia, all these different locations of Clair throughout the world to get them involved and make sure you gathered their requirements and that the implementation was going to meet their needs. But was that a challenge? And if so, what did you do to balance those two things, the need on one hand, or the want to potentially have one standard common set of processes versus the localized needs of the local markets there?
Uh, Leverage and the standard functionality of IFS as the baseline of what we want to do. If there needs to be unique or regional specialization, great. But the software itself as the starting point, we have some corporate policy in how we handle certain transactions. That's another thing. But the HMRC module for tax reporting in the UK, great, have at it. It's really cool, awesome. But the rest of the world doesn't really need it. Um, so it was put that highest common denominator in that we possibly could using the standard functionality, and then be like, okay, can you guys adjust to meet here, or is this something that is truly unique and we have to do this really strange way? For the most part, it is all standard functionality. I'll say we have 70 very light modifications from, say, UI or adding a column here and doing some light formula work, a couple major integrations, and the 28 to 30 customized reports. But compared to some that I have spoken with where they've done thousands of these little modifications, I think we did exceptionally well.
Mm.
Um, Not that you don't want to modify to suit your needs. You absolutely need to do that. But if you can leverage the thing as it is out of the box and then put all of the work on the vendor uh, for their base thing when there's these upgrades, especially with cloud, keep it current. Um, and you don't have to test and work through all these customizations. It is huge, and you don't see it, you don't feel it, but it is a pain that you don't have to live. Where we have seen is where we have done some customizations, we've actually had some level of impact and discussion with IFS. And you can't do everything all at once. And the world's trying to do AI, and AI wasn't on our bucket list, but it's in everything. It's pervasive. But working through things, it is our hope that in the coming years, we'll be able to unwind some of those customizations that we did and just leverage the standard functionality. Sure, we'll have to unlearn and relearn and teach people this new way, but there is a lot of it that's like, why aren't you doing this now? And yet you talk with them and they're like, oh, okay. So we've had some pretty interesting conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very very interesting. And here's a sort of a related follow up question from Darian as well. Were there any moments where the team felt stuck or defeated, and how did you push through? And maybe even just expanding that a little bit more. Were there times where the morale dropped off? Maybe they didn't feel defeated, but maybe they started to doubt the viability of the product and its ability to do what you guys needed it to do, or doubted whether or not you were actually ever going to get to go live. Were there times like that, and what'd you do to overcome them if you did?
So I'll say that in our industry, employee mental health is a big deal in the live events industry, and not just the ERP project. I'm talking about like the frontline folks out in the field. And so it is a big part of our culture to actually listen to our employees. And me as a project manager, um, I knew that they would not all thrive every day during the project. That's not how it works. But I dang well made sure they were surviving. Um, it's those high profile projects that we work on, those high performance is an expectation of what we put out as a product, and the inside of the organization supports it. So they all know what is going on. The show must go on sort of attitude. And the culture of the company revolves around supporting that kind of work. Um, I'd say we broke even, like strategy eats, well, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think it's
Right.
actually the phrase. Everybody welcomed having a plan and structure, but it kept changing. So I had to keep educating as things progressed. But as long as I told people what was going on nicely enough, and as long as we kept things somewhat uh, cooperative and professional, there was no kicking and screaming fest. That's just not us as an organization. Um, People were able to adjust, and it it was this is more of a change management than it was project management, but to get everybody in the organization working together and realize that they weren't alone in it. I like if I saw somebody working on something and I'd see that they're on our chat thing late at night or emailing, I I let them know, hey, I saw that. It's like, do you really need to be doing stuff that late at night? It wasn't something I would say, but I would let them know and acknowledge their work, and that make them feel that they were not alone in it as much as I could. Um, but it was like that throughout the organization, and it's just this quantum mechanics level of individuals to all the other individuals, all those communication networks.
Mm,
And you can make broad statements, but it's down to individual interaction to build up anything that is effective. But if any one of those individuals is out of alignment or is having problems, it could cause difficulty for others. And so you just need to be aware, you need to be sensitive and know that you you need to challenge your team, but you shouldn't be abusive of them. You need to support them. And that's something where I'm quite sure our software engineers view me as a drill sergeant. And there are others that will create memes about me being from like a TV character in the Office television series. Um,
which
but
character, by the way?
uh, I don't. Well, I think it vacillates. So there are some favorites, and it's never one I would pick.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Um, so there's a lot to it, and I'm exceptionally proud of our team. Like they put so much time and effort into it, and convincing them to do so wasn't difficult. Um, that because they had a certain level of PTSD from the prior system. And
Mm,
remember, I brought in the business side. They saw that they could be a key element into the future success. That was a motivator I can't do. Like their pain motivates them to put in something that will work for them in the future. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a lot of work. And it was a functional matrix. Myself and one other, we had the time. Everybody else was still doing their day job. And so for just about everybody, you're changing over an airplane to go from using propellers to using jet engines while it is in flight.
right.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of moving parts for sure, and it's not like you can slow down the core business or set things aside in your day jobs. You've got to keep doing your day job and figure out how to do this in parallel. How did you handle the resourcing side of it? I mean, was that a I assume, like we were talking right before we went live here today, we were talking about how is there a company out there
Oh,
that has a bunch of people available just sitting and waiting for this ERP project?
yeah, dare to dream, right? It's it comes down to really risk management, but it's not that there was some that we were able to mitigate or actually transfer onto others. Like we leveraged our implementer more to help us in certain areas when we saw that it was something that they could take and run with. But there's a whole big chunk of it we just say risk accepted, and we just dealt with it, and it was like, yep. Um, it's and we I mentioned my broadcast background, like true broadcast, like towers and transmitters and stuff. And if a plane's going to hit a tower, a plane's going to hit a tower. It can be broad daylight, it can be nighttime with as many lights on it as you want. It could be lit up like the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. A plane will hit it if it's gonna. What's important is, do you worry about the plane hitting the tower, or do you come up with some basic principles and basic plan elements that you can use when a plane does hit the tower? And that was something where we got very creative,
Hmm.
and I tend to plan ahead. So I never really get it that far out of whack that it compromised anything. But there were times when we just said, hey, we need exactly that, more time. We wound up from our initial go live date delaying from October uh, 1, or actually I think it was September 1 to October 1, and then we punted to February 1. And still, all things considered, I s- I view that we got everything done ahead of schedule because we had such an aggressive timeline. If we had let our resources completely dictate our timeline, um, we'd still be doing discovery. Like
Right.
it was a big project. But our team was ready for the challenge and they rose to the challenge and the occasion, and it you just support your team and you tell their boss, hey, this person's doing really good. And our team was very good, and we have a healthy organization where somebody needs to disappear for a bit or like back off. It's cool, I get it, right? Do it. They have to take care of themselves, they've got to take care of their family. If they do that, everything else does fall into place.
Yeah. What what was an example? Just to back up for a minute, you talked about how if a plane, the metaphor that if a plane is going to hit the tower, the plane is going to hit the tower. It's more a matter of how you respond to that. Can you give us an example of a situation during the implementation where the plane hit the tower, so to speak, or you accepted the risk, knew that it was a risk, and then the risk transpired or materialized into a problem? Can you give us an example of something like that that happened?
Sure. I'd say there was we did not descope everything as well as we should have across our implementer and us internally and the software provider at the beginning of the project. And we got backed into a corner as far as data migration is concerned. And I realized that there were a lot of people all around making a lot of assumptions. And I I shot up a flare. And we had not a we had a quite an interesting conversation or two about it, but it wound up being that we uh, del- awarded more scope to our implementer to help us through the data migration, and we backed out some things that we thought we could do, because hey, why not? Into no, these are things that we know what to do with and we will do, and these are things that, you know what, you guys have got it. We'll feed the beast. Let us know what you need. So that was one of the earlier ones that happened in the late fall of 2023, spring of 24, and it it changed our approach. That was one of the ones where we transferred the risk onto our implementer to help us with data migration. There were certainly more that we could have done, because data migration is just like you could it's just like how detailed do you want to be. But what I have seen for us is we're almost always dealing with simple sets of data going into more complex structure. That was true for us in this, and it's also true in other things that I've seen that we've done. And it's whatever the new thing is, it's typically more complicated, supports more information, that interacts in a more complicated manner. It's just the way of the world. So it's always this one to many relationship. There were a couple things that went back the other direction, but I didn't really even clue in on that until like maybe after all that brouhaha middle of last year. It's like, oh right. So this is one of the things where when it comes to a data migration approach, it is, do you map out all of your current data, or do you map out where data should be in the new system? Ultimately, you need to do both, um, because if you just try and use the data that you have, you're recreating your current state in a different piece of software. Sometimes, like you're self-limiting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, just turning to the audience here again. Ard is joining on LinkedIn from the Netherlands. Thanks for
Yeah.
being here today. And then this is from Sanjay on YouTube. Sanjay says creating risk mitigation metrics for pain points from stakeholders lands well in final outcomes. So, did you just out of curiosity, did you identify or use your stakeholders and business users to help identify some of those risks and some of those potential challenges along the way?
Yes, there's always there are always questions about like, hey, how do we execute this policy, or will the people be able to adapt and understand that? Um, that was something from that business to team level. From above, the stakeholders in our executive team were very supportive. They wanted to see specific things, and at certain times they took a back seat because they knew that the project wasn't ready for them. And there were other points where I had to bring them forward into the project because the project needed them. And there were other times when the project was just ready for them to get engaged and do their thing. What really drove us was our CEO. It was a project that he is a big supporter in, and it sounds simplistic, where the metric of success is a happy CEO, but it's true in that he wants to get out of it what he needs out of it to make business decisions that he needs to make. Great. What he also does not like is a whole bunch of people um, complaining to him, just in general, but also about a piece of software, especially if they spent as much time and money and resources into standing it up as we did. So, is that person, if they're complaining, what's the actual story there? Is it actually that, hey, we do have a system problem or a policy problem or a procedure or a training problem? Or is this person just using it as an excuse? But ultimately, there is something there that needs addressed. But if the CEO can get what they want out of it, and the rest of the organization isn't complaining anymore, I guess, and organizations normally complain, then hey, um, we're good.
Yeah, yeah. If if there was any one thing you could do differently looking back, and you get a chance to have a mulligan or go back and do it all over again, what's that one thing you learned that you thought, you know what, this is, I wish we would have done this a little differently?
Yeah. You say that as like one thing would have made all the difference. Uh, Almost having closed out the project, I'd say we're about ready to start the project and do it well. There's just so much there, and I've seen this before, not just here, but just in all sorts of things, where any number of things that I would pick, all it does is open up bold new ways for failure that I could only dream of. Um, and it's a different world now. Like all that AI stuff, the cloud is more advanced, and everything is different than 3 years ago when it started. I would say though that I would have tried harder sooner to get the business involved further upstream and really formalize that, and take what I have now from project management structure and like a streamlined charter, and gotten that buy-in from
Hmm.
key people earlier than we did, and from the executive team as well, and really tried to make sure that as we were progressing, there was better communication with the rest of the world to continually get their input and make them aware and keep them trained. Like there was just a lot, but as the organization, I don't know if that could have really happened though, because all that was it was changing in the organization as we were going forward, and it's as we grow, it's wow, the what you pick for a solution 1, 2, 3 years ago, by the time you get to 3 years later, your organization is different. Like you cannot, nobody has the same exact people doing the same exact roles with the same exact titles. Like maybe they do, but it's you have to continually adjust your vision to fit. And so now that we have a much clearer view of what that end state vision is, how do you bring that back 3 years ago to when we started to say like, hey, this is what we're going to do to get us there? I would have looked more like a lunatic, careful choice of words, had I gone around trying to explain some of these things to people back then, because they're like, oh, we don't do that, or we won't need that, or all those sorts of other things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. What kind of along the same lines then, what's the one And I know there's always more than one, right? I hate to box you in like this because I know that's in some ways unfair to make you pick one. But if there's one or two pieces of advice you'd give to someone who's about to start this journey themselves, what would those couple, handful of piece of advice be?
Um, I hope they're wearing sneakers like I am. Run away. Like when I was like, that's it. Um, that's not really feasible for everybody, but it's when I was the solution architect and the project manager and the change manager, I knew what I was signing up for. That I'd be dealing with 70-hour weeks for however long. Um, if that doesn't scare somebody off, prepare thyself. I during the project got a PMI PMP. I during the project went through and got ProSci AdCar.
Hmm.
Get them now. If you're even talking about it, get it now. It will help you. Whatever it is, the change management world is vast. The project management world is vast. PMP or Prince 2, either one, you're awesome. Um, the the ProSci AdCar I lit onto because it gave us a good way to understand the change at the individual level, and it had a method. It wasn't just a theoretical. Um, the other thing is, I mentioned the 70-hour weeks and the three things. I didn't get everything done. So we didn't, it's always an awkward conversation. Why aren't you using third stage now? Well, this is the stuff third stage said that we needed to do. And I agreed with. But out of the resource and bandwidth, we were only able to execute this. And Tony Ford himself, the great Tony Ford, said, I'm a broken record, man. If you guys can't execute and I just keep telling you to do the stuff, this is the definition of insanity. And the same with the TA for change management. If we had deeper resources, if I was just the project manager, if I was just the solution architect, if I was just the change manager, we would be in a whole lot better position than we are now. But there are only so many hours in the day, and there's always a priority to what needs to be achieved on any given day. I wake up, I'm like, I'm gonna go in the office and I'm gonna do this. And from checking my computer over my cup of coffee to turn it on at the office, boom. Well, I guess I have a different day today. And
Right.
it was like that every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to, and I appreciate the shout outs to Tony and Atia and our team at Third Stage. But if it's any consolation, we run into that a lot. Where we know what the client should do, they many times even know what they should do, but the reality of running their business in parallel with going through a project like this doesn't always lend itself to it. But to your point, I mean, I think a really good point you made, and it's sort of an underlying thread in a lot of your responses throughout today's discussion is you're talking a lot about preparation, or you're kind of alluding back to what can I do up front to prepare for this? What certifications and training and education can I get now? You talked about the project charter and the project governance, getting executives bought in, getting the business involved, recognizing that this is a business project, not an IT project. The more of that you can do up front, I suspect, in your case, that might have made things even easier if you had a lot of that done up front.
Yeah. If you have and in the continual organization change that we do, it's like now I have all sorts of organizational process assets. I had to build up communications things to do what I needed to do. If there's any sort of something that your director of communications is doing, if you have a change management department or CMO or PMO now, if there are things that they want to do to help communicate or execute their projects better, if it can help a little project, it's going to help a big project. If you can get to the whole organization to do something, anything together, then that helps set you up for success to do something that is even more important for the whole organization when they all truly do need to work together. So it is if your organization isn't project ready, um, and everything's very reactive, you're going to have a much bigger battle, an uphill battle, than if your organization is adaptive and maybe used to change. They may not like it, but can they get through it? Do they understand who all the players are worldwide in their organization? It's an ERP. Like it can be worldwide, and for us, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. So where do you go from here? Sort of what is your What are you working on now? What's your roadmap for the future as it relates to your enterprise technology and overall change initiatives?
I'm going to continue making the organization a better organization, and I have a stack of projects that I want to execute or things that we need to do to help support that, like internal communications and how we all work together. Continue to enhance and grow what we've created from this little digital transformation that we've done. Uh, and we'll see where the future holds. The organization is growing, and that as it grows, that creates new challenges, but also it allows um, new avenues that weren't there before. You find the word synergy gets bandied about a lot, but it was okay. Well, what can we do now that 2 years ago, 3 years ago wasn't on our strategic roadmap because we just weren't able to do it as an organization.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting for sure. I mean, none of us are sitting still, but you guys are growing quickly and have global operations. The entertainment industry is constantly changing, which I imagine affects you. Technology is changing in the multimedia space, which I imagine affects you as well. So staying on top of all those changes, plus doing all this enterprise tech stuff in the background and all the change stuff in the background, it's a handful for sure. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
well, good. Well, I appreciate you being here today, Seth. This was a great conversation and really appreciate you joining.
yeah. My pleasure. Absolutely.
And what's the best way to learn more or to connect with you and or learn more about Clair Global?
Uh, Probably just email me, smorth at clairglobal.com. So that's my company email. Everything else is a bit haphazard. LinkedIn, I don't haunt it as much as um, others do, and the other social media stuff is just there's just so much noise that if somebody truly wants me, they hit me up in the email, and then I interact, and I'm pretty good for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Well, good. Well, thanks for being here. Thank you to the audience for the great questions here today. And we do these live discussions every Tuesday, same time, same place. So wherever you're joining from here today, you'll see us here again next Tuesday. We bring on different guests to talk about different topics. Although all the topics are the tech agnostic view of digital transformation and enterprise tech. So be sure to join there and keep an eye out for this episode of Transformation Ground Control. Once it's edited and we add more content to it, you'll see that episode drop a week from tomorrow, a week from Wednesday. So every Wednesday, there's new episodes. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com and you can see all the past episodes there as well. You can also subscribe to the podcast, listen or watch on whichever platform you prefer. So thanks everyone for being here today. Hope you have a great week, and we will see you next week on this episode. So take care and have a great week.
All right. Thank you.